The Army Corps has paused work in New York, San Francisco, Boston, and Baltimore. White House says these projects may be cancelled. The US has taken the survivors into custody after striking a suspected drug-related vessel in the Caribbean. President Trump has confirmed the attack, saying that the vessel transported massive quantities of drug. Officials say that details on survivors and operations will be released soon. China has agreed to resume trade talks with the United States as soon as possible. US President Donald Trump has in fact confirmed that his meeting with Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping is likely to go ahead, saying that their relations are improving as both sides signal de-escalation. Qatar is set to host talks as Pakistan is sending its defense minister and intelligence chief to meet the Taliban regime in Doha. This comes after Pakistani airstrikes have killed 10 in Afghanistan, breaking a 48-hour ceasefire. Those are the headlines, viewers. Our top focus. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has now expressed concern that Israel may use Hamas's limited ability to recover bodies from beneath the rubble in Gaza as a pretext to resume military operations. Speaking alongside his German counterpart, Fidan stated that fresh remarks coming in from Israel are worrying for Turkey, given the fragile state of the ceasefire agreement. Ankara is set to participate in a task force to monitor the implementation of the ceasefire in Gaza, aiming to ensure that both sides adhere to the terms. The Turkish minister's comments, of course, come as Turkey is being increasingly concerned about the potential for renewed violence. He's emphasized the need for strict oversight of the truce as well. Listen in.
Sağlanan ateşkes ortamının devam etmesi bizim birinci önceliğimiz. Aynı zamanda insani yardımların kesintisiz girmesi fevkalade önemli. Zaman zaman İsrail tarafından bazı ifadeler duyuyoruz. Bu bizim için endişe verici. Günün sonunda hedefimiz İsrail ile Filistinler arasındaki bir tampon bölgede artık iki tarafında birbirine zarar vermeyeceği bir ortamı oluşturmak. Diğer taraftan Gazze'de vuku bulmuş olan yıkımın, hasarların, yaraların sarılması nasıl mümkün olacak? Uluslararası toplumun burada da bir varlık ortaya koyması gerekiyor. Buna yönelik erken yürütülen tartışmalar var.
There, of course, we've heard what the Turkish foreign ministers had to say. Meanwhile, joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Saul Satka, security analyst and author from Tel Aviv. Interesting statement coming in from Turkey. Turkey was on the signing table in Egypt along with Egyptian President El-Sisi as well as Qatar. What do you now make of Turkey's remarks, the remarks that have come in from the Turkish foreign minister? Are they really solicited at this point?
I don't think the Turks are correct. I don't really think that Israel has any interest in dragging out the war. Israel's interests are for the war to come to an end. There's no appetite among the Israeli public for the war to continue. And as the bodies continue to return, getting dribbled out by Hamas, the Israeli public become more and more certain that they've no interest in returning to fight in Gaza. I don't see that happening.
And I also wanted to understand from you, why exactly are we seeing such rhetoric coming in from Turkey? We do know of Erdogan's ambitions to be a major player in the Middle East. He's trying to be a major mediator, a role which we see that Qatar and Egypt have increasingly engaged in rather than Ankara. So is it this sense of wanting to be the broker that is emboldening Turkey to make such statements?
It could be. Erdogan has many problems domestically. He has a minority of 20 to 25% of the population who are Kurdish and want to be independent. And all these actions, including his support for the Muslim Brotherhood, are primarily distractions from his domestic issues. It's really just for show what's happening here. He wants to like you said, he wants to present himself as being critical to the infrastructure of the Middle East. And to some extent, Turkey is certainly a major player, but they're not going to have any effect on Israel's actions in Gaza.
And how do you think this would go down with the Americans? Because Turkey has been trying to play a double game, not just where the Middle East is concerned, but also as far as the war in Europe is concerned as well. We've seen talks take place in Istanbul, but at the same time, Turkey has been purchasing Russian oil, something that has not gone down well with the Americans.
I can well imagine. Turkey is rather stuck with purchasing Russian oil at the moment. They have been a permanent enemy of the Russians. They have more to lose from a resurgent Russia than almost anyone themselves. That's why they are, after all, in NATO. And so they of course, they want to try and get what they can out of it. There are no friends in geopolitics, only interests, as Kissinger once said. But as Russia continually becomes weaker, as they grind themselves into dust in the battlefields of Ukraine, Turkey has the opportunity to renew their interests around the Black Sea. And we'll see how that plays out over the next decade. We're talking about processes that happen very slowly here.
All right, requesting you to stay on with us as we're tracking some other crucial developments, this time from within the United States of America. White House Budget Director Russell Vought has stated that the Trump administration will freeze another $11 billion worth of infrastructure projects in Democratic states due to the ongoing government shutdown. Now, according to the report, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will pause work on low-priority projects in cities such as New York, San Francisco, Boston, and Baltimore. Now, these projects might eventually get cancelled as well. According to Vought, President Trump wants to reorient how the federal government prioritizes Army Corps projects. The Trump administration has already frozen at least $28 billion for transportation and energy projects in Democratic-controlled cities and states. And we do know that Donald Trump is pressurizing his opponents in the Congress to end the shutdown, which began on the 1st of October. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Saul Sadka. We're now nearing the 3-week mark. It's already the 18th of October. And there are warnings that what Trump is doing, the statements have come out even from Secretary Scott Bessent that if the shutdown continues, it could lead to, in fact, recession in the near future. But what do you make of this fresh piece of news coming out from the United States where Democratic-led states are now being targeted? Do you think this sets a sort of precedent?
I don't know if it does, to be honest. It could be that it does. I would have to check as to whether presidents have specifically targeted their state tied to the opposing party for budgetary cuts. In general, in America, politicians will try and get funding for projects in their own states or in states of their allies. That's quite natural. Whether projects in the past have been cancelled or held up once they've already been approved based on the political affiliation of the leaders of those states or cities is curious. It might be unprecedented. I would not put it past Trump to do unprecedented things.
Indeed, and
if anything, that's the one thing that's always reliable with him, is that he is president unprecedented.
Absolutely. And, I mentioned about experts warning that a recession is on the anvil if this continues. But we're also seeing at the same time Trump's tariff policies resulting in price hikes for commodities for the average American consumers. So it's very likely that we would witness a double whammy situation in the United States of America. Then I wanted to understand from you, could we then expect the Federal Reserve to lower the interest rates?
To be honest, I I'm not following the interest rate situation or the inflation situation in America. That's not really my wheelhouse. My guess is that the numbers I have seen for the American economy is that despite the tariffs, it is doing very well and holding up very robustly and continues to charge ahead to lead the world's economy with a GDP of $32 or $33 trillion and a GDP per capita of something like $80,000 last time I checked. It's by far the richest major economy, say with 10 million people or more. We'll see how that plays out. Everyone in the world needs to trade with the USA. They are the largest economy. They're about nearly a third of the world economy. And their players, the BRICS nation, as the Russians like to call them, apart from India, are having rather a tough time. So the rivalry that the, say, non-aligned nations were hoping to build up against America was never really particularly solid. And America is now dividing and ruling the world economy again under Trump. It's a risky strategy for the administration there because it does risk spiking inflation. Tariffs have the opportunity to do that. We'll see what happens. But in the end, any small blow to America of a few percent here or there in inflation, even a small recession, will not in any way erode its vast advantage. It's vast. Vastly, it's not even close. It's vast advantage over all other major economies on many, many levels.
All right, with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting our focus to what's happening in the Caribbean. A U.S. defense official has stated that the United States has taken survivors into custody after the military struck a suspected drug-carrying vessel in the Caribbean. U.S. President Donald Trump has also confirmed the attack and has warned that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro should not mess around with the United States. This is the first known attack that anyone has escaped alive from ever since Donald Trump began deploying the military increasingly in the Caribbean and launching these deadly strikes in waters of Venezuela's coast last month. The United States has acknowledged carrying out a number of strikes on vessels near Venezuela that it says were transporting drugs, killing at least 27 people. Meanwhile, Venezuela's government has stated that the strikes are illegal. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Charles Thompson. He's an Australian journalist joining us from Sydney. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. We're seeing the situation, the tensions, in fact, between Venezuela and the United States heating up even further. Yet another strike has taken place on a Venezuelan vessel that the United States claims was carrying drugs. Now, in the midst of all of this, I wanted to understand from you, what are the repercussions of these strikes? We did see the Venezuelans trying to raise this issue at the United Nations a while back. How successful do you think they would really be? Because Washington does not recognize the Maduro government. Washington also has a veto at the UNSC.
America, look, Venezuela is a small country in comparison to its size with the United States and its economy. The Venezuelans will just have to bear this out. If in fact, as it's well reported, that they're dealing with drugs, then at some point something will have to change in Venezuela. Countries just can't go on allowing huge amounts of drugs to be produced and then exported, and that to be the revenue of your country.
Indeed, and we've also seen some rather strong reactions coming in from other Latin American nations as well, including Colombia. Colombia's president has expressed concern with regards to the US strike, stating that he hopes these tensions do not spill over to his country. We've also seen the Mexican president come out and state that she will not be participating in a summit hosting leaders from different Latin American nations because an invitation had not been extended to Venezuela as well. What, in your assessment, are the concerns that these countries have?
Well, you see, these countries have huge drug cartels. All of them do. It's an open fact. You can go onto Netflix and see TV series about it. And their biggest market, and the biggest market in the world, is the United States. And United States has finally woken up to it and has turned around and said no more. Now, I can understand Colombia's problem, because Colombia is looking at Venezuela and thinking, well, once they've finished with Venezuela, we may have some problems. The Americans are going to pick on us. So, it's only logical that they'd start talking about this now. But, it's well known that there are huge drug cartels throughout South America. And it's, at some point, the Americans had to act. They should have acted maybe a long time ago. But now, but it's a very violent thing. These are not nice people, and they don't treat people nicely. I'm talking about drug cartels, and the Americans, I want to stop it. They've stopped, they say they've stopped illegal migrants crossing the border. Now they want to stop drugs coming in, right? And best of luck to them if they can stop drugs. I mean, what a gift to the youth of the United States.
Indeed, and speaking of the transfer of drugs itself, we do know that a majority of the drugs are transported via land through US's border with Mexico. And there was a UN report that had come out a while back that stated that most transshipment of drugs takes place through the Pacific and not through the Atlantic or the Caribbean, which then is now being cited by critics to question the deployment or the increased deployment of troops in the Caribbean. What would your response be?
Okay, so when we had, under Biden, we had an open border policy. So, of course, if you're going to take drugs in, you could just go across the border. Now there's a wall, and now you've got the US military. So, if I'm a drug cartel trying to get my drugs into America and I can't get them across on the land route, I'm going to try the water routes. And I don't know if you've seen some of the footage, but they're high-speed boats. I mean, these are not, these are quite sophisticated, and you can actually see, all the packaging and everything wrapped in the boats. They're not fishing vessels or tourist vessels. These are there for a purpose, to try and get drugs into the United States. And, the Americans have said enough is enough. And of course, but my sympathy also has to go to the South American countries, because they have enough difficulties managing their own countries, let alone taking on very powerful drug mafia.
Indeed, and as you've put it, we have been seeing an increased amount of fentanyl being trafficked into the United States. It's in fact the #1 cause of death in the youth over there. I request you to stay on with us, Mr. Thompson, as we continue to track further updates, this time from Haiti. Now, the United States and United Nations have slapped sanctions on the former head of Haitian presidential security and the leader of a Haitian gang for their roles in criminal gang activities that have destabilized the impoverished Caribbean nation. The sanctions were placed on Dimitri Hérode, who was the head of presidential security when President Jovenel Moise was assassinated in 2021. He was imprisoned in connection with the assassination. Sanctions have also been placed on Kempe Sanan, the head of the Bel Air Gang, one of the many criminal groups that make up WAVE and Sanam's gang coalition. The UN Security Council unanimously adopted a resolution ordering all 193 UN member nations to freeze the assets of these two men and impose a travel ban as well. The resolution also imposes an arms embargo on Haiti. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Charles Thompson. At the outset, I wanted to understand from you how might these moves now disrupt not just the activities of these individuals, but the larger criminal nexus as well?
Well, I'm at the moment in Australia. I'm quite far away from Haiti and the islands there. But of course, the Americans are having a zero tolerance on drugs, and they're enforcing it. And of course, drugs are not just coming from Venezuela, they'll be coming from Haiti and so many other countries. And the Americans want to put a stop to it, so they're putting their foot down. But unfortunately, you know, a lot of these countries have not had stable governments. They've had huge high crime. And even with the best intentions, maybe of some of the government officials there, it's very difficult for them to manage the situation by themselves. So the Americans have to get involved.
Indeed, as you mentioned, it's difficult for the local administration to manage the situation. You've pointed out to the fact that Haiti has witnessed political turmoil, but the socio-economic situation of average Haitians is also rather bleak. In your assessment, then, how can civil society organizations then step in order to provide relief to the ordinary people there?
Oh, that's a very complicated, and look, that's a very complicated issue. I've not been to Haiti, but it's a small island, as I presume. It's extremely complicated, it's extremely difficult because the infrastructure is simply not there in the country to give support to its own people. It's going to take many, many years. But for the rest of, you know, for the Americans, who are the big players in the whole region, until they can see that drugs have been removed from Haiti and they're not getting into America, I don't think we can expect much more. One would hope that some of the other countries around Haiti would also be giving some assistance and helping them, but it's a no-win situation for Haiti at the moment.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time, sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting our focus away to the United Kingdom, where we're now learning that Prince Andrew has decided to give up his title of Duke of York after years of controversy surrounding his ties to the late US sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, in a statement, the 65-year-old royal says that he would no longer use the title or